Hello there. Our governing classes made a decision for us decades ago, but failed to get our consent for it. More and more people are waking up to the fact that inward net migration is now running at an extraordinarily high rate and want the government to drastically reduce it. But the government, whether it be Tory, Labour or coalition, will do no such thing. They decided decades ago that this was the way forwards for the UK, but never put it in a single manifesto nor put it to a referendum. And this is central to the growing divisions we see in our country, brought into stark relief by the Israel-Hamas situation. And the reason our politicians did and still do this is because we in the UK have a falling birth rate, something that puts a strain on the system as people stay alive longer but have ever fewer taxpayers to fund it. Our natural population is producing fewer workers every year, threatening to derail our entire economy. Hence, we import those of working age where we can, as often as we can. And it's now being estimated that our immigrant ratio will be somewhere between 37% and 54% by 2083. And this suits those who wish to destroy our way of life. A new report from ARC Research by demographer Paul Morland and economist Philip Pilkington breaks this down into 3 outcomes for our society. What the report authors say is that we have a trilemma, in that we cannot maintain economic growth, social cohesion and low fertility rates. One has to give. And that trilemma gives us the choice between accepting economic stagnation or worse, resulting in there being less than 1 worker per retiree by 2083, and that sounds extremely unsustainable to me, or accepting high levels of inward migration to keep the economy ticking over, with ramifications of its own, and more on that in a minute, or having more babies. Now, this is not a new problem. As I said, this is decades old. But because demographic-related problems take decades to manifest themselves, the short-sighted politicians and those without a feeling of responsibility for the future ignore the signs. That'll be someone else's problem. Just give us the dosh today. Now, the last time the UK had a fertility rate above the replacement level of 2.11 was way back in 1973. That's 50 years ago, half a century. Our fertility rate is now down at 1.56. And that's not just down to lower sperm counts. There are many social and economic problems at play here too. But no UK government, well, Tory, Labour or coalition, will ever put this situation to you, with the reason being that we will not accept a failing economy, and the country cannot afford to give everybody everything they demand unless as many people as possible are slaving away every hour of the day at work to keep the economy going. That means no time or money for families. Not only that, high house and rent prices mean people either cannot afford their own place or, if they can, they have no money or time left to start a family. So the only answer, as far as the government sees it, is to keep the borders wide open and hope they can somehow maintain social cohesion into the future. But as the ARC report says, substantial evidence shows that very large increases in migration create income inequality and a stratified society. Such high migration levels could pose a real risk to social cohesion. That's without the religious angle as demonstrated so starkly in recent weeks. But it does go a long way to explaining how the woke and cancel culture was allowed to get so powerful and infiltrate every facet of our lives and social media, to try and shut down any dissent. The establishment uniparty would be very keen to use nudge units and the likes, as well as new laws and the police trawling Twitter and Facebook to chase down those who expressed non-woke, unacceptable opinions about migration. Nip all negative talk in the bud and terrorise people into believing bad things will happen to them if they even think the wrong thoughts, let alone express them. And there does seem to have been a lot of that about recently, doesn't there? The enforcement of social cohesion by a form of secret thought police. So I'm wondering if all of this was part of trying to maintain social cohesion while fundamentally dismantling society as we know it. In fact, it's so WEF-inspired as to be almost a certainty. Something that would mean our government, far from taking its eye off of the demographic ball, had its eye firmly on mass inward migration as the answer to our population reproductive problems. Anyway, the report writers say, in contrast, having more children spells potential rebirth and poses an opportunity for increased human flourishing once again in the West. Socially and economically, it is by far the most advantageous scenario for the future of our society. But we in the West have prioritised work, success, consumerism and the me culture over the responsibility of having a family, to such an extent that this will be a hard supertanker to turn around. We are also being pressed by the eco-lobby to have fewer children so as to save the planet. But worse than that, we've descended into making motherhood a dirty concept with talk of chest feeding and bonus holes, as well as all the woke garbage that goes along with it, to the extent that some politicians are scared of defining what a woman is. After decades of this politically correct trash, we need to start putting the family back at the heart of everything. And we need to be able to talk openly about this stuff instead of having unscientific claptrap thrust down our throats. We need to value children much more as a society and never again turn a blind eye to incidents like that of the Rotherham scandal, for example, which I'm told still continues to this day. And our education system needs to promote the family instead of trying to subvert it and indoctrinating children into thinking they are not what they really are, if you get my drift. But it will also take a huge economic shift away from regarding the people that live in the UK as purely there to fulfil the requirements of big corporates, either as workers or consumers. It also means workers becoming more productive, i.e. producing more in less hours, so giving themselves more time for a family life, and that takes massive investment. Then there's the cost of housing and the cost of living to consider. How we have let our younger generation down. We send them to university in their droves to shoulder a huge debt burden that they have to tote around for the rest of their lives, where many or most would be better off getting into work early. If mass university education worked, surely the UK economy would be booming right now. Anyway, one big issue here is birth control, both pre- and post-conception, with post-conception numbers now at record levels. And the reasons for that will be manifold, but may well contain cost of housing and cost of living reasons, something that as a society we should be ashamed of. In one way or another, we are denying so many of our youngsters the joy of parenthood.